Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of KBC Open Dialogue with me, Adnan. Each week we meet a distinguished guest who has to play a significant role in the improvement of the quality of our lives here in the UK. This week is no different. In fact, this week's guest is not just someone who is going to be playing a significant role in how we live our lives and the quality of our lives, but is someone who has been a tremendous source of pride for our community, someone who has achieved so much over such a little time, and someone who you may not have heard enough about so far, but over the coming weeks, months and years, I'm sure we will all be fully aware of who she is. Before I introduce you to my guest today, I just want to give you a bit of a background to her. I'm sure you will all heard of Claire Short, the outspoken and principled Labour MP who will be stepping down at the next general election. My guest will be filling the void that she's going to leave or that she has already left. Now, Claire Short was extremely well known for her passion, for her commitment and dedication to the issues that she believed in. So that void is a void that must be filled by somebody who is equally as passionate and equally as principled. And it's a huge responsibility to fill such a position. And it's an immense source of pride for the Kashmiri community that the person that's been selected to fill that gap and fill that void is one of our own. She is Shabana Ahmed from Birmingham, who has been selected to stand for the Ladywood seat in Birmingham at the next general election. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to my guest, Shabana Ahmed from Birmingham. Assalamu alaikum, Shabana.
Welcome, Sam.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you very much for being on the show today.
It's a pleasure.
Before I continue any further, I mean, Claire Short's shoes, I mean, that must be, a huge burden on your shoulders.
I don't think of it as a burden. I think it's an incredible honour and privilege to have been selected to fight for Ladywood. I think it's a constituency that's got fantastic potential and a great deal of work that you can do. And, Claire has obviously, crossed the party lines in the sense that her appeal is very broad and, she's obviously worked very hard on the issues that she's passionate about. And so that, it's a real challenge and an opportunity to try and, do the same and follow in similar footsteps. So I'm very excited about the challenges ahead.
Good. Well, we're all excited. I think the more people that we have coming forward from our community, I think it should be a source of excitement and pride for us all. Before I kind of go into a bit more about what you are planning to do and what you're going to be doing, I just wanted to have a bit of clarification.
Yeah.
I understand with the selection process there was a bit of controversy with regards to the nomination ticket. Would you elaborate on that for me slightly?
It was a very passionately fought selection battle. It was a very tough selection battle as well. And it pitted myself against a sitting councillor from the Labour Party who was a councillor for one of the wards that's part of the constituency. And, after the selection, I guess maybe she obviously had some concerns about the process and the way that the selection was run. And, she used her full rights as a Labour Party person to raise those concerns with the party. And I'm very pleased that the party actually put together a formal inquiry panel to look into it because, from my perspective as a selected candidate, I want people to have confidence in the process and to feel happy with the result and to know that it was a fair result and absolutely in accordance with the rules. And so there was an inquiry. It was headed up by...
Was it an internal Labour Party inquiry?
Yeah, it's
was
an internal...
an independent panel?
No, it's an internal Labour Party inquiry, but the people on it were from the party's National Executive Committee.
Okay,
so, they have a subcommittee that deals with selections, and they put forward 3 people from different backgrounds, trade union movement and all the rest. So they looked into the process.
Obviously, the problem, should I say, that you had during the selection process, do you not think that's going to have a slightly detrimental effect on your actual election campaign?
Oh, no, not at all, because, the inquiry panel looked at absolutely every aspect of the selection to, satisfy themselves. There was no piece of paper in the selection that wasn't, double-checked, triple-checked by the inquiry panel. And they looked into every single complaint and, possible complaint that could have been made. And, it was a fair selection. It was a fair process, a robust process. And probably one of the toughest processes we've had.
Right,
the rules allow you some latitude, so sometimes
so you've really been thrown at the deep end with regards to everything.
It was very, very, it was very tight as a process. And, I'm very happy that the panel, said that the process was fine. And that that, as far as I'm concerned, puts that matter to bed.
Okay, fine. Well, look, before we go into your political aspirations, tell me a bit about Shabana Mahmood, because so many of our viewers won't have heard of you purely because you're at such an early stage in your political career. But how you're 28. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'm declaring that on air. But as a politician, everything is out in the open, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's public.
Yeah, exactly. So at such a young age, I mean, you've achieved so much. You're a practicing barrister.
Yes.
I know your family is heavily involved in politics, especially in Birmingham. Your father is the president of the Labour Party in Birmingham?
Chair of the Birmingham Labour Party, yes.
In Birmingham. I mean, how did you I know a barrister is a traditional route to enter politics, but tell me a bit about your background, your education, how you came about to be in a position where you are today, running for Parliament.
I mean, from a young age, I've been interested in politics. There were two things I wanted to be as a child. I mean, I watched far too much Kavanagh QC as a kid. So I wanted to be a barrister straight off the bat. And from a ridiculously young age, I must have been about 4 or 5. And everybody in my family always said that, you like talking, so that kind of job would really suit you. And the other thing, I watched lots of sort of political type dramas as well. Probably too young to really understand what was happening, but that also seemed pretty cool and exciting to me. So that was the other thing that I wanted to be. So those are, kids want to be astronauts and all kinds of exciting stuff, and I wanted,
but you wanted to be
barrister or politician. And so those are the kind of 2 career paths I sort of set out for myself. And politically, I've just been very active in the Labour Party for a long time. I mean, Labour is my natural sort of home as a party because of its focus on social justice, fairness, equality. So that was the natural party for myself. It was also the natural party that, for my parents, like many people from an immigrant background, were gravitating towards the Labour Party because of its commitment to ending race discrimination, using the law, and all the rest. So, my parents were already, Labour Party people, and that's the kind of Labour family that I was brought up in. And
so it was almost a natural transition for you.
I guess so. I mean, I was just always very, involved in the party from a young age, leafleting, door knocking, on behalf of other people, being part of election campaigns, by-election campaigns, and it was just something I was always involved in.
So although from our point of view, you're a new face to politics, but in reality you're not, because you've almost grown up in that environment.
Yeah, and I've been active on the Birmingham scene for a long time. So, and that's just something I've been involved in for...
So I'm not going to call you a veteran, but you're certainly experienced.
Yeah, I'm probably not old enough to be a veteran, but certainly experienced. Certainly at that level of, party foot soldier, party activist, been, experienced for a long time.
Okay. I know with regards to issues, I know you were very passionate about the Iraq war.
Yeah.
So the problem that we've had with the Iraq war is people have used it as a platform to further their own kind of profile, either by supporting it or by opposing it. Obviously, when it comes to opposing the Iraq war, it's to be sounding to be pro humanitarian benefits or equality and all those kind of things. But what was your motivation behind opposing the Iraq war? Because you were quite outspoken about that, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you take it from different angles, I guess. But for me, the question was, did I believe the evidence that was being presented, or did I think that evidence merited a preemptive strike? Because preemptive strike is a pretty big thing to do, internationally. And you have to know you're doing the right thing. You have to absolutely have rock solid evidence. And the evidence that I've seen in the public domain, it didn't make me feel confident that a preemptive strike was the way to go. And so, I mean, obviously, if our country is under threat, or we're imminent threat of a bombing from another nation, we've got to take a view as to how best do we protect our country and our people. But that evidence, I'm afraid just wasn't there. It seemed to me much more that there were other things at play that we weren't necessarily understanding, and there wasn't, in my view, enough thought about what happens once you're in Iraq, because obviously, I mean, to me it was always patently obvious that Saddam Hussein wasn't going to mount much of a challenge. It was going to be an easily won physical battle, but then of course after that there's the aftermath, and the Sunni-Shia conflict that's been raging for centuries, and the two countries you're going to pick to try and solve that are not going to be the States and Britain. So it was a very, very complex issue. I think sometimes it's very easy to say I'm pro-war or against the war, and you've got to think a bit more deeply about all the different angles to it.
With regards to the war itself, yes, the war has happened, and whether it was a violation of United Nations protocol or human rights, the point is the war has been done.
Yeah.
Whatever rules were broken on an international level. But what do you think the fallout of the Iraq war has meant for people here in the UK, especially on a political level? Because the Labour Party, I believe that so many of the Muslim community feel betrayed by the Labour Party, feel let down. It's a party who, for the last 3 or 4 decades of ethnic communities living in the UK, especially our Muslim communities, people have worked very hard for and have been very loyal to the Labour Party. And in the last few issues, it's almost a case of we feel betrayed that the Labour Party did not listen to us, did not acknowledge our sentiment or our concerns, and almost juggernauted their way through to deliver their agenda. What do you think the damage has been done?
I mean, I completely appreciate where you're coming from in terms of that point. But, the other thing I would say to people is, do remember that scores of Labour MPs voted against that war. And, although, the Labour government and many people in the party were supportive of it and voted for it.
I
understand
the public are
that.
going to say, yes, the Labour Party went to war.
Took us to war. No, I absolutely
people
understand
forget
that.
how many people voted yes or no.
No, I absolutely accept that. But in politics, it's impossible to have 100% agreement with people 100% of the time. That's just never going to happen. And I'm equally against the Iraq war, as passionately against the Iraq war as, many of my fellow Kashmiris, many of my fellow Muslims, many of my fellow non-Muslims as well, actually. So, I have a broad background of people who, similar to me, are against the Iraq war. But yet I am still within the Labour Party because I still believe it is the party of social justice and fairness, and because I accept that there will be issues we disagree on. But the question is, what do you do when you disagree? Do you marginalise yourself or do you remain in the mainstream?
Briefly on the Iraq war situation, what's the future? What is going to be happening? What do you think should happen with regards to the occupation of British troops and American troops in Iraq?
Well, I mean, our troops are coming home, and that to me is very important. But the other, it's equally
but
important
isn't
that
just
we
rhetoric?
don't. No, at some point our troops have to all be home, and I want them home sooner rather than later, absolutely, However, we do have, having gone into Iraq, we do have a responsibility to make sure that we don't leave Iraq in a weak position, or that we do everything we can to assist a democratic, successful Iraq where every citizen is able to enjoy a good quality of life, irrespective of their background, Sunni, Shia, whatever, and that all the different groups are able to take part in the public institutions that Iraq has. And whatever our role in that is, I think we've got to play it properly. But we've also got to take a lead from the Iraqi administration now, in the future, whichever administration is in place. But the Iraqis have to almost be able to say to us, well, this is what we need from you, but this far and no further.
Do you
it's
not
got to
feel,
be a better dialogue.
as the current Labour Party, as the Obama camp currently feels, that you're now having to clean up a lot of the mess left by Tony Blair and George Bush?
Well, it's obviously been
it is a tough challenge. I mean, you've got the economic crisis, you've got the banking crisis, you've got high employment or unemployment rising, and then you've got the whole international scene where Britain and America now have to make friends again because they have a need to make friends again. Do you not think that you're almost like, for the foreseeable future, you're going to be cleaning up the mess left by Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and George Bush?
I think that's putting it a little too strongly. I mean, the economic difficulties are global difficulties, and that they result from lots of different factors. Actually, mostly just a massive breakdown in regulation, and I do think there has been a massive breakdown in regulation, and things like the Madoff affair and now Stanford as well. It just goes to show, the big guys who are earning the big bucks. I mean, there was some seriously dodgy stuff going on behind the scenes. So that's what that stems from. Look, there's challenges in politics. Whatever time in politics you come to the forefront, there's always going to be challenges, and you take things as you find them.
But I'm sure you would prefer to be at a stage when the Labour first came into power with a massive landslide victory than you would be today.
Well, it's all a challenge. I mean, in 1997 we came into power after 18 years of Tory rule. Now, who wants to have suffered 18 years of Tory rule? So it's a question of perspective, and also
but do we be in a position when people say, well, who wants to be suffering 18 years of Labour Party rule?
Well, 18 years of Labour Party sounds good to me.
Okay, I'm sure it does.
It gives us a chance to put even more things in place that further the agenda of social justice. That can't be a bad thing.
Let me move on. I want to find out more about Shabana Mahmood.
Okay.
What makes you tick? What drives Shabana Mahmood? What issues are you passionate about, and what can we expect from Shabana Mahmood? I mean, what are you passionate about? What issues make you really tick and drive you?
I mean, I guess the central issue that, although there's lots of issues. I'm someone who wants, a political person, so there's lots of things that interest me. But I mean, particularly, I guess education is the first and foremost thing that I guess drives me. Partly because that's the reason I've decided to enter politics, because I feel I've benefited from a tremendously privileged education. Purely from a state background, immigrant family, yet I was able to, enjoy the very best education that the world has to offer. And then I was able to fulfill my sort of, my professional goals that I had set for myself. Again, from being, from an immigrant working class background, to be able to do that, I feel really privileged. But I also feel very passionately that everybody else, regardless of background, should have the same opportunity that I have had and that I've enjoyed. And too many kids from my class back at my secondary school, I know now, have not been able to reach the heights that they could have done. Sure. had they had those same opportunities or the same push. And I feel very passionately that people should be able to access that same level.
You're at the beginning of your career right now. If you wind forward towards the end of your career and you looked back then, what would you like to be able to say that you achieved?
Oh, good question. I think I would. I mean, primarily, I hope to get elected. I hope to be the Member of Parliament for Birmingham Ladywood constituency, one of the most challenging constituencies in the country. It's got very high levels of deprivation. In 20 years' time, if I was the MP over that period of time, looking back, I would love to feel that I had a role in steering that constituency round, in removing those factors that lead to deprivation, in helping to, have it as one of the most improved constituencies in the country. No longer the poorest or, the most deprived, to have brought around that kind of change. And I guess to be the kind of constituency MP that's very involved and, that the people know and respect and hopefully can feel proud of, that's what you can aim for.
As a future MP, not only have you got, from my perspective, not only have you got a burden of responsibility on your shoulders to represent your constituency members, but being an Asian woman and of Kashmiri background, you also have a burden of responsibility to deliver for the community. Yeah. Now, there is a sense, aren't there, that people from especially our community who have come forward into the public domain, we've got endless number of mayors and Lord Mayors and MPs and whatnot, but there seems to be a sense that the consideration for the public benefit is only present during the election process. Yeah. And once they're in seat, for the next 4 years, there's no need for the public, and it's almost a case of, there's no drive, there's no commitment towards the general public. Are you going to be different?
I can only speak for myself, so I can't, I wouldn't comment on the way that other individuals do their business.
The reason I'm saying
for me,
that's the traditional,
I appreciate that's the perception
way of doing politics back home.
Yeah.
And some of that, unfortunately, has been carried over here as well in how people get elected, with the whole brotherly and the whole Zard kind of thing going on. Are you going to be different?
Look,
because there is an expectation from you. You're young, you're of a modern generation. Yeah. How are you going to be different?
But I mean, that's exactly it. I have been born and brought up in this country. Being British is a very important part of my identity. It's very important to me. So sometimes when people talk about the politics of back home, I've had to educate myself about those things because they're not a part of my daily life. They're not things that I've experienced or encountered or indulged in. So, and I can appreciate that there are systems in place, that the community's had a certain way of doing things for a long time. But time changes as well. Sure. Time moves on. And the community damages itself if it doesn't move with the times. Okay. And so I would expect any person that I come across, whether I'm seeking their vote or whether they're a member outside of Ladywood, so it's just a general dialogue, I would expect them to ask me what I stand for, ask me about the things that drive me. Don't look at, oh well, she's Jat or Chaudhry Brady, that must mean she's okay. Sure. Well, no, it doesn't.
I'm going to have to stop you there. Okay. We're going to have to take a short break.